Welcome back to this video, how to help your loved ones feel less isolated. Now, if you are somebody who's committed to this path of self-mastery, who wants a successful and fulfilled life, then you know connection is the key to fulfillment. You know that the disconnection you might feel with your parents, with your children, with your partner or your loved ones can be the very thing that costs you flourishing, your well-being and your success. So, let's dive into this week's Believe in Growth video broadcast. My name is Dr Satguru, and this is your compassionate path to self-mastery, where we fuse the wisdom of compassion with the science of mastery. Let's get straight to it. In 5 minutes, I'm going to give you some techniques that's going to help you communicate in person with someone that's quite rigid, isolated, and not open. And we're going to be able to, with practice, help open them up through, of course, the transformative power of compassion. Now, why is it so important to tackle this problem of isolation? Maybe there's a leader at work that's isolated. Maybe you work with someone that's a little bit isolated. Maybe it's your mother, your father, your children. And what I mean by isolated is essentially lonely. They're not really opening up. They're not sharing anything meaningful. And it feels like banging your head against a brick wall because they're so rigid in their thinking. They just don't really want to talk to you. Of course, that can be frustrating, and I feel you. It can be frustrating for the person who's trying to make a difference in their lives, but of course it can be even more painful for that person themselves who's going through that isolation. But isolation affects our happiness, our health, and our wealth without a shadow of a doubt. People who are isolated or lonely, it has significant effects on the cardiovascular system, on the state of their sleep and their immune system. And of course, from a happiness point of view, we know that connection is the key to fulfillment, which means that, of course, they're at risk of anxiety and depression. And they're at risk of fewer job opportunities, wealth in general. You're going to struggle from this period of feeling lonely. So if you know somebody that's feeling a bit isolated and lonely, this video could be just what you need to help open them up, deepen your connection, improve their lives at the same time. So here are the 3 tips, and these are all tips that you can use in person. See, people forget communication is very much about the tone, the rhythm, the content of your words, but also your body language. And the story behind this is I was reading a book from Nick Morgan, who is a communication specialist from Harvard University. And he spoke of a specific body position, which is called the heart-centered pose. And I'm being a bit exaggerated with it at the moment, but it's where you lead with your heart, your shoulders are back, your chest's out, and you're standing nice and firm and tall. And you set an intention in your mind for an open and connected presence. Now, in the book, he has so many stories of executives using this technique to break difficult news, to be authentic when they're giving presentations, to listen to their staff, whether it's someone right at the bottom of the company or at the top. And it has amazing results. What I started to notice is I started to consciously try and adopt this posture at the right times. And I went to a writer's workshop, and I was standing there in the workshop with all these amazing people. And I was standing in the heart-centered pose. In my head, I said, I'm going to be open and connected. What did I find? Some of the most interesting and potentially isolated people there came and spoke to me. They came and opened up to me. I met a lady who worked for the UN across the world. I met people who had, huge audiences and followings, people who were doctors, but then went into the business of holistic medicine. And, I believe that had a lot to do with the way I was carrying myself, thanks to this book. So I want to share this with you. So the first tip is to have an open presence, an open body language, or a heart-centered pose. So it's when, as I said, you stick your chest out, shoulders back, and you enter into a conversation or an interaction with somebody with the intention in your mind, literally saying to be open and connected. And watch what happens. When you just set that intention, you leave space and silence, you look at someone and you ask them a question, something very open, like, what's been great today? What's been going on over the last week? Get curious with them with that body position and see what happens. Fascinating. Step 2 is the phrase which I came across from one of my friends, and it's absolutely amazing phrase that opens anybody up. See, we all want to feel heard, validated, seen. And a lot of the time, people feel isolated, not necessarily because they don't feel like they can share their pain with you, but because they can't share their joy with you. So the second tip is to use these 3 words: tell me everything. When somebody shares something like a win or something that's good that's going on in their lives, to help them feel connected in that moment, you can just say the phrase, tell me everything. Give them silence, sit back, watch them outpour all their joy to you, and in that moment, they stop feeling like what they're sharing is not meaningful, and they start to feel connected. Now, the third and final thing is to be mindful and present of their body language. So people often have 2 conversations going on in their head. They have the conversation that's going on outside and the conversation going on in their head, which means that their subconscious may be saying a different message to what they're saying out in the real world. So if someone's feeling isolated or they need support, in their head they may have a lot of negative self-talk. They may have a lot of things saying that you're not enough, this is a stupid thing to say. They may have a lot of overthinking and rumination going on in there. And what can help to help people feel connected and less lonely and less separate is you just gently inquiring about their body language. So you've met them, you've been in that intention for open communication, you've said, tell me everything, but something seems a little off, like they're deleting something, they're not quite saying what they really need to say to you. And you just get curious and say, hey, tell me what's really going on. Watch what happens. Watch what happens to that parent, that leader, that loved one when you inquire about the words behind the words, the feelings behind the words. Watch them relax. Watch them feel completely cared and looked after in your presence. So let's recap this video on how to make loved ones feel less isolated. This is in-person, compassionate communication techniques, if you like. The first is to set this intention to be open and connected and be in that heart-centered pose. The second, of course, is to say the phrase, tell me everything. And the third is to be present with their body language, to attune yourself to theirs, and also just query, get curious about why they're moving their body in certain ways. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you. I'll see you guys next week.